Hello, fellow Netrunners, and welcome once again to another data pack review. That's right, with the last of the Mumbat cycle spoilers out, it's time to review the Liberated Mind. And joining me is my very fantastic Patreon supporter, George. Hi, George. How are you
Hi
doing?
Ben, good. How are you?
Yep, doing fine as well. So, to kick things off, let's go talk about the previous pack, which is Sunset Island, and how that has changed things. How do you find the pack yourself?
Well, I've noticed it changing a lot of things in my local meta and online. For my personal decks, I've been playing Andromeda and Spark a lot,
Hmm.
so not too much change there. But I also play an Argus deck, and Salem's Hospitality has been fun to slot in there. So yeah, it
Nice.
was pretty impactful, I would say.
Yeah, Salem's is a card that I really want to experiment with, but as a whole, the pack was quite underwhelming. I didn't actually get, as you can probably tell from my videos, I didn't actually mess around with too many of the cards aside from Jeeves. Jeeves has given us a pretty interesting new archetype, the HB Fast Advance.
Yes, that's been a lot of fun. I've built a couple decks and I've been experimenting with. It's been a lot of fun.
How do you like it competitively?
Uh, I like it a lot actually because one of the first decks I learned to play since I got into the game late was a efficiency committee shipment
Hmm.
from Sansan deck.
Yes.
So this fits in perfectly with that.
Yep, very classic. And
Yep.
yep, Sunset Slums, which many people were hyped up about. Turns out, no, I don't see too many people running it. I myself don't run it. Employee Strike is just way better against IG.
Right, I agree. And it turns out a lot of people who tried to play slums against IG decks, IG was already prepared for them by playing Elizabeth Mills. So
Exactly, yeah. And against all the other matchups, Slums is more or less dead.
agree, agree.
Alright, so that was last pack. Let's see what we have on the horizon. We'll start off on the Noble Path. It's an ANR run event. You lose your entire grip, but you don't take any damage during this run. Hmm, I don't see too much use for this. I don't know.
I agree 100%. When when I was kind of getting ready for this review, I was really trying to think of uh, any competitive decks or any fun decks that this would be a part of. It's pretty difficult to use, I would say.
Yeah, it just looks like a better version of leverage to me, and that doesn't say much at all.
Right, exactly.
I mean, some really nice users are running through a Yanis 1.0 and taking no damage, running through a Junebug or a Cerebro, not worrying about the damage at all. Very fringe cases.
Yes, but again, after the run, even though you've taken no damage, you have no cards. So I don't. That's
It's a pretty big downside, I have to agree.
yeah.
Too bad.
Yeah.
This looks like Binder fodder. Although it does synergize with the card we're going to talk about next, Emptied Mind. You get an extra click when you have no cards in your grip. Now, we all know how powerful extra clicks are. Adjusted Chronotype is basically a fifth click for Anarch decks, and this slots in perfectly as a sixth click for Dumble Fox decks and Noise decks. All you need, because it synergizes with that broken card called Faust. You just have to pitch all your cards at the end of the corpse turn, and then you get six clicks on your turn.
Yeah.
So this
It's
must be a
just.
tier 1 deck, tier 1 card.
You think so?
No.
Yeah. I mean, it's what kind of deck slot would you give up to play this card in any of those competitive wizard or noise decks? I couldn't really think of anything where it'd be too useful.
No. Yeah, I was just joking. As Noise, you want to install your viruses, not trash them. And as Wizard, you want to start with lots of cards in your grip so you can make runs with Faust. It is too risky if you play this without Faust because you leave yourself open to Neuro EMPs and the like.
Exactly, and those are all over the place now. So
Yep. No doubt, the extra click is very powerful, and at 0 to install, it is quite a good deal. But at the end of the day, it just seems like Aesop's fodder, if nothing else.
yeah, I agree. I could see it for that.
Zero cost for the win.
Yep.
Alright. Okay, now we actually have an interesting card. Criminal Run Event. It's another HQ run event, but this one's better than CBI Raid. You force the corp to separate the HQ into two separate piles, and you access one of them during the run. What do you think?
I do think it's better than CBI Raid. But so as I said, I've been playing Andromeda a lot with two legworks, and I can't imagine. taking either of the legworks out or any of my dirty laundries or my inside. I can't imagine playing this over any of the cards that already exist for criminal.
No, absolutely. You're very right there. I mean, if you think of a 5 card HQ for the corp, accessing 3 cards with legwork is still better than picking a random pile.
Right. I actually think if I'm the corp, I might be a little bit glad if you play this card. Because it gives me another opportunity to play some mind games. So I don't think it's much upside for any of the crim decks.
And doubly worse if you are a flatline Jinteki deck because you can just stack up all the net damage cards in one pile and kill the runner with it.
Oh, exactly, absolutely.
The one place where information sifting might be actually better is if there are more than 5 cards in your opponent's HQ.
Oh, for a CI deck.
Aha! Now we're
Yeah,
talking. Now we're
yeah,
talking.
that would be awesome.
That
But
is way more impactful than a legwork.
yeah, absolutely. Wow, you could see 10 or more cards.
And because this is a criminal card, the other possible use for it is with Fisk Investment Seminar.
True, that's true.
That's another
Uh,
way to boost the hand size of your opponent.
yeah, so maybe a Ken Tenma deck, uh, who's playing a lot of run events, could slot this in.
Oh yes, yes, that's a very good point. It is a run event.
Yeah,
But sadly, I really don't think what criminals need now is more run events, HQ run events at that.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, this doesn't really help them much at all.
Yep, it's been very sad so far for criminals.
No, and that's the only card they got because the next one
Yep.
we are looking at is Out of the Ashes. This is another run event. Wow. This is the 6th off for Shaper,
Yep.
and well, you can read the card text. You can make lots of runs.
Yes.
What do you think?
It's interesting. I could possibly see this going into some competitive shaper decks, but it's 6 deck slots again. I think it's better than exclusive party at least.
No, that doesn't say much either. But
Yeah,
yeah, 6 deck slots is really the drawback with all these consumer grade cards. Um, so the interesting thing here is the heap ability because this one is clickless. So it's kind of like Jack Sinclair.
right. I've seen some people experimenting with Jack Sinclair and Out of the Ashes.
Yeah, so for starters, it's a pretty good answer to horizontal decks like NBN because not only are you getting extra draw from your Astrolabe, you get to check those extra remotes as well. It's pretty efficient.
Yes, I agree. It can be very efficient.
And it
Um,
definitely makes you want to consider running Desperado, even though it costs 4 influence now.
oh yeah, absolutely. Desperado's the best.
Do you see this being played anywhere else outside of Shaper?
I mean, if so I guess the question is, do you have 12 influence to spare?
And the answer is probably no.
Right.
Not even in Ken Tenma.
What do you think the low number of cards is to make this worth it? Is 3 of these worth it even?
Oh, that's a good
In
question. Problem
I,
is, it's to me, it's like early bird, isn't it? It's such a low impact card.
yeah,
So realistically, the only way I see this being used is in a Wombo combo Shaper deck.
yeah,
Because you notice that you can actually trigger multiple of these in the same turn. So if you trigger 6 of these at the start of your turn, you're getting 6 extra clicks. That is insane.
yeah. That would be pretty nuts.
And you can think of all the extra hyperdriver, triple hyperdriver things that you can pull off with this. So
That's true. That would be interesting. But like you said, that's very combo wombo.
yep, outside of combo wombo, I don't think you can really run this because it's too many deck slots.
Agreed.
Okay, that's Out of the Ashes. What about this? Liberated Chella? Click, 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 forfeit an agenda. That
Right.
is a lot of cost.
Right. So speaking of combo wombo, um,
Yes.
yeah. So I guess now you could say shapers have the opportunity to win the game without ever stealing an agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Because with
Notoriety is a thing.
yeah. So, but again, you you really have to build your entire deck around that strategy with hyperdriver and all nighter.
Yep.
I guess so. Um,
Actually, It's not possible, is it? Because you need to forfeit an agenda. Oh, right, you have fan site.
Right,
Yeah,
fan
yeah,
site notoriety.
yes, of course, fan site. So that's the problem. Because you're usually triggering this off fan site. Fan site is the only 0 point agenda that I can think of right now. The problem is to score at a fan site, you need your opponent to score an agenda. And when your opponent has an agenda, they can prevent your score of the Chela by sacking their own agenda.
Right.
So it's kind of I don't know. It seems like there are too many ways to stop this from happening.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be very impactful at all. I mean, it'll be fun to see how people try to build decks for it, and I think it'll be fun to play against, but I can't really see it having too big of an impact.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, it looks tasty at first sight. The ability to get 2 agenda points for 0 cost, that's insane.
Right.
But ultimately, when you think about it, that's 6 clicks that you're forfeiting in addition to an agenda. Those 6 clicks could have been used to play indexings, maker size, what have you.
That's very true, right.
So, yep, I'm. This definitely doesn't go in your typical Shaper deck. Wombo combo, once again.
Yeah.
Man, this game is getting more degenerate by the minute. So, let's liberate our mind with this tempo. Um, it's something that you can use to stash your clicks in between turns.
Yep.
I don't know about it.
Right, because if so, a card that this kind of reminds me of is Katie Jones, where if you have an extra click per turn, you just load Katie up with 3 credits.
Yep.
So in that case, a click is worth 3 credits. In this
A
case,
click is worth a click.
right. So I mean, I guess it could be uh, comboed with the Chela, but you have to steal an agenda first, like we said. And you could be spending all this time setting up this combo, like just playing Netrunner and stealing agendas and indexing, like you said.
Yeah, and more importantly, there's already a card in the card pool that does exactly this. It's called All Nighter. How do you think
Yep.
this compares to All Nighter, which, if I remember correctly, is 0 to install?
Right. I don't think it's would replace that for people who play the All Nighter. Yeah, it is 0 to install, and this is 2. Gee. And all nighter, and this is unique as well. So you could have three
Alright,
all
it
nighters
is.
on. Yeah, you
Well,
could have
on the other
three.
hand, All Nighter is one use, whereas this lasts for the entire game.
Yeah, I can't see you using it that many times per game though. I feel like this would be a tool to set up a big turn. What do you think?
That's true. Unfortunately, there's the restriction that you can only use this once per
Right.
turn. I mean, the ability to unload clicks. So you're getting at most 1 extra click out of it.
Right. So every other turn is going to be 5 clicks, and every other turn is going to be 3 clicks. That doesn't seem like a much of a
Y-
gain.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like you can do much with that.
Yep.
Well, again, more disappointing cards from the runner side. Let's see if we can. Aha! There we go. Now we are talking.
Yeah.
Rebirth, the card that has been spoiled for so long, and everyone has been theory crafting since on how to play it. What
Yep.
are you going to do with Rebirth? I hear you like Andromeda decks.
Exactly. So I, I actually it's I don't know if it's 100% functional on Jinteki.net, but I slotted it immediately as soon as it was available and started playing with it. Um, and I think it works great in Andromeda. I think she's the most obvious case to use this in because it's basically taking a Leela deck or a Gabe deck or anybody, a Ken Tenma deck, and just making their setup that much better.
Yep.
So I do like it, and I think the math has been done on it before, and you have a decent chance when you're Andromeda of seeing it in your opening hand, taking the mulligan into account.
Yeah, that's actually a very, very good point that you brought up there. So, can you bring us, if you don't mind, spoiling your regional tech a bit into your Andromeda deck? Just roughly give us a lowdown on what it is and what sort of IDs that you anticipate yourself switching into.
Sure. So my Andy deck is pretty much a boring stealth Andy deck. I use 2 cloaks, 2 RDIs, refractor.
Okay.
So and a corroder, and that's all my influence.
All right.
Um, so if I don't change anything else in the deck, if I take out one of the RDIs and slot in this and another card we'll get to. Um, I could, I think it would be okay just to keep the deck the same and put Leela in when I pull a rebirth.
Yeah,
Uh,
Leela seems like a very good call for
right,
basically any corp other than IG.
right, exactly. But I could also see some of the Gabe decks starting the game as Andromeda. Um, and I think I'm going to experiment more with that.
Yep. But are there any other criminal IDs? Probably not Guys or Fisk since you're not building around those.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be bad for Geist because his biggest problem is it takes him so long to set up.
That is true.
So you could try it in him as well, but again, you'd have to have the deck already built for Geist. So yeah,
So here's an interesting question. Are all criminal decks strictly improved with Rebirth? I mean, sure, you lose the one influence, but that aside, is it better just playing everything out of Andromeda and switching later?
um, well, yeah, any criminal deck would be better if you got to start as Andromeda. So I guess
But you have to factor in the possibility of not finding Rebirth for the entire game and being
exactly,
stuck as Andromeda.
exactly, and that does happen. So again, if you're going to take a Gabe deck and start as Andromeda and never get the opportunity to become Gabe, that's bad.
Yeah.
So I think the Andromeda into Leela um, build that I had would be fine because it's just a general good stealth build, and Leela's ability would just be a bonus. So
Nice. Yep. If you're starting out as Andromeda, there's no reason not to
yeah. So
Rebirth.
so what about you? What do you think?
Well, for me, I'm going the other route because we have talked about criminals this whole time, but I think Rebirth is actually most effective in Anarch. Not because, I mean, sure, Anarchs don't have Andromeda's crazy ability. Starting with 9 cards means you see everything reliably. In
Yep.
fact, your reliability goes down because you're going to start off with Valencia, which has an insane starting ability. Game 1 Bad Pup, she does nothing for the rest of the game, which means that Rebirth will strictly improve your ID.
Yeah.
Now, the biggest bonus to running Rebirth in Anarch is that you gain a lot more in-game flexibility compared to criminals. Whereas with criminals, you are more or less locked into swapping into one ID, be it Leela, Gabe, or Geist. For Anarchs, you are swapping based on the matchup. And Anarchs have some of the best uh, silver bullet IDs we have. If you're up against Butcher Shop, just swap to Edward Kim. If you're up against horizontal decks, Wizard takes care of it. By the way, that's 4 recurring credits you have to trash assets because you have Bad Pup and 3 recurring credits.
Yeah, that's such a good point. This does as much as I like to think this helps criminals the most. This just gives anarchs even more of a boost.
Yeah, and you can definitely envision a lot of Anarch decks just swapping over to Valencia with Rebirth. The one exception is probably Noise, which you want right from the start of the game, right from the get-go. But
Yeah.
everyone else, it just seems like you don't want to play situational IDs like Reina Roja, which is invalidated by Iceless decks, or Quetzal, which is invalidated by Barrierless decks. Just play
Yep.
Valencia and swap into them when necessary.
Right. But so do you think the larger deck size requirement of Valencia would stop people from doing that?
It is definitely a downside. Very good that you pointed that out. This means that you cannot rely on swapping out because your rebirth could be stuck at the bottom half of your deck, never to be
Yep.
seen again. That being said, because Valencia is so innately powerful with that all powerful blackmail, it's
Yeah.
not much of a loss.
Yeah, that's nuts. Yeah.
Yeah, so you don't really have to worry about your corp rushing out behind remote because you have blackmails. You only need worry about fast advance.
Yep. It makes me so sad that you're so right.
Yes, I'm quite sad that I'm that right too. It's quite, but that is the way things will go. And
Yep.
from now on, I think tournament results will not be very reflective because there's going to be a lot of Andromeda and Valencia around, and almost none of the other IDs. So we can't just look at IDs anymore because a lot of people will be swapping their IDs mid game.
Yep.
So far we haven't talked about Shapers. Shapers are probably the worst faction to play Rebirth in, but also the funniest. You can
Yeah.
play a Professor Legal deck in any other ID or vice versa.
Yep. Yeah. That. Yeah. It's more like you said. It's more funny than impactful than anything.
Yeah. Well,
I suppose you could rebirth into Kate from the Professor.
yep, that is
It's
pretty good for installing all your programs.
yeah,
Or actually negate Nasir's downside by starting off as Nasir and swapping into a better ID later on.
yeah, that's true.
So
We
yep,
always forget about Nasir.
with good reason, no one's running
Yep,
ice anymore.
yep.
So
Well,
yes,
no one's running.
that's
No one's running expensive ice anymore.
that too. Yeah,
Yep.
sadly. So that's Rebirth in a nutshell. A very game impacting card. Sadly, very high variance because it's limit one per deck. So either you see it or you don't, and that changes the game a lot.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's gonna see quite a lot of play. So that card you were talking about, swapping your RNDI for a Rebirth, and this one, I
Yeah, you
reckon.
good guess.
Yep, the turning wheel. So take us through this card and why you think it's good.
So this card, what it allows you to do is you can everybody can obviously read it, but it for every 2 runs you make on HQ and R&D where you don't steal an agenda, you get a power counter. I'm sorry, for every run you make on HQ and R&D that you don't steal an agenda, you get a power counter, and
And it
then you
should
can
be
pull.
noted. Oops, sorry for
No, go
interjecting.
ahead. Should be
Yep,
noted what
that it doesn't have to be a successful run.
exactly. So even if you get bounced off ice. Um, And then in the middle of a run, you can use 2 power counters to access additional cards. So I've been using this already a lot. It's working on Jinteki.net now. Um, and it's pretty interesting because, well, like I said, my viewpoint recently has been from criminals, so it synergizes well with a lot of their cards, especially account siphon. Um, so I think it definitely has a slot in a lot of decks.
Yep. I have to agree with you. The biggest impact would be in criminal because they have all these run manipulating events that don't access cards. You don't
Yep.
access cards during siphons or sneak door runs, for example. Maybe you do,
Yep.
but in addition to accessing cards, you charge up the turning wheel and you get more accesses at the end of the day.
Yep. I mean, this could be coupled with again, anarchs. This is useful for as well. We see still a lot of eater decks around,
Oh
and this
yes.
works. And this works with those as well. So, I think it's going to be a really impactful card. But I was discussing with somebody if it's worth getting rid of an extra RDI for, um, because basically this is every third run you get to see an extra card, whereas an RDI is guaranteed 3 cards every time. So if you're playing as the corp, what do you think is the bigger threat? What do you want to see uh, least on the other side of the table? 1 RDI and a turning wheel, or 2 RDIs?
Well, your mileage may vary. It varies between 2 and 3 runs because if during your R&D run with your R&D with your turning wheel activated, you don't access any agendas, you're still accumulating power counters. So it actually charges up pretty fast, especially if you are playing very aggressive early on. I think you have to be very afraid if a criminal is charging at your HQ every turn and loading up a very big turning wheel, because all they need is that one access on R&D to wreck your deck.
I agree. And in the testing I've done so far, it's definitely better to save them up and not unload them as you get them.
Now, the more interesting question is, you mentioned that you're swapping one R&D out for one turning wheel. Do you think that despite it being unique, you want more copies of turning wheel just so that you can see it consistently early?
Yeah, I did actually put 2 into some of the versions I had, and it's pretty great because Andromeda will almost, most of the time she'll have one in her opening hand. And to just put that down in the beginning of the game because it only costs 2 immediately starts that threat rolling. So I think it's definitely if you're gonna use it and you have the extra influence now, 2 slots is the way to go.
Yep, I have to agree with you. 2 sounds like a perfect number.
Yep.
And of course, if you can manage the influence. Now just 3 extra notes on this card that some people might not notice. Firstly, the 2 hosted power counters is a paid ability, so you don't use it after accessing the first card from HQ or R&D. You have to declare using it before you commence the access, much like how you declare the number of cards you want to access with medium before actually seeing any cards.
Right, exactly. And that's articulated very well because you have to do it either. in one of your paid ability windows during the run.
Yep.
Um, yeah.
And it works for the remainder of the run. So if you're doing anything fancy like Raymond Flint, to access cards from HQ, you're getting extra cards as well.
Yep.
Now, the second and third points are both with some particularly notable synergies with existing archetypes. Because it works on unsuccessful runs as well, anyone running Orvor Snitch, this is your card.
Oh
It's gonna be
yes.
so good.
So Andromeda rebirthing into Nero with Au revoir Snitch and Turning Wheel. That's going to
Oh
be a new thing.
gosh, and see your opponent's entire deck after a while.
Yeah.
And also notably, it's a virtual resource. So guess who loves virtual resources?
I
Our good
think I've
friend.
yes. A good friend, maybe Apex.
That
I can't.
monster.
I can't remember because I haven't seen it in so long. But
For Apex. I
yeah.
recently the first UK regionals in the UK regionals concluded, and basically among the last three places there was Adam and Sunny. With no other Adam and Sunny placings. All of them were placed in the bottom three, and Apex was
Yeah.
nowhere to be seen.
Yep. That sounds about right.
Well, things might change with the turning wheel.
So
As the,
do you think this makes Apex playable?
it makes Apex tier 1, obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
uh, we'll have to wait for Apex's card in turn 5.
Yep.
Pack 6 to find out. Was it pack
Yep.
5? I forgot.
Uh,
Either way, let's turn the wheel back to this card that we skipped. The Vindor. What do you think?
So, someone when I was kind of getting ready for this, I was talking to somebody about it, and they said, "Is this card even playable? You can only have one on the table, and with all the IG running around, every time you get pinged for a net damage, you're gonna pay 4 credits. I don't think it's very good in the current game right now."
It's a pile of steaming poo. That's what I'll say.
Okay, I was a little nicer, and you were honest.
I mean, this works against C double Scorch. That's about it.
That's it.
As you said, it doesn't protect against ping damage at all. The last thing you want to do is to fork out so much money just to prevent the drip net damage. And even meat damage doesn't help much. This doesn't help much either.
Yeah, and if this for some reason became popular in the meta, I could work around it in my Sea Scorch deck. Not too difficult.
Yeah,
So it's not going to be very good.
yep. And in a mid-season Scorch deck, it's done because it's a resource. You can just trash it.
Yep.
Possibly the best use for it is that it's a connection, so it draws you an extra card with off-campus apartment, gives you one more credit with calling in favors. That's about it.
Yeah.
Oh well, I guess
Yeah.
that's what Guru Gobinda's good at.
Oh well. Yeah. Oh well. About sums it up.
Alright, let's move on. I guess that's all for the runner cards. Tune in next time to find out more from the co-op side. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and thanks George for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Alright, see you next time.